Dorothy Green, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dorothy. Roll call, we have all governing board members in attendance, as well as Drs. Wagner and Boyle. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's board meeting and remind the audience of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if you wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards. White cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item, and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Policy also states that there is a 5-minute time maximum per speaker. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. If you do not want to address the board, but wish to give your comments in writing, you can do so on a goldenrod, and all members will receive a copy. Approval of agenda, is there a motion? I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of minutes from the August 12th, 2014 board meeting. Is there a motion? Going once, going twice. Is there a motion?
I will move to accept the minutes as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Public comments, we don't have any public comments tonight. We'll move on to Dr. Boyle for the superintendent report.
Welcome everyone this evening, and thank you for being here at our governing board meeting. I know that many of you were fortunate earlier this evening to hear information from our governing board candidates at our forum this evening. As you can see, we are very fortunate in the Creighton community to have people who are willing to give back to the community and to serve the school district on the board. So again, we're very fortunate to have some high quality candidates. As we move into this next week, there are many evening activities that I would just like to remind people of activities and meetings in this next week. On Thursday, September 25th, we are going to have our first community council meeting of the year, right here in Kennedy School multipurpose room, and that begins at 6 p.m. We're going to receive information during that time on some of the initiatives that are on the ballot in November. And additionally, we would like to share with the members of community council and our community what we are doing this year as far as strategic planning, and hopefully loop out to people who may not be on the team so that they may share within the community. Next Monday is the 40th day of school. It's September 29th. And also that evening, we're going to have the Monte Vista School groundbreaking ceremony at 5:30. Again, of course, on the Monte Vista School grounds. And so we welcome everyone to come and help with the groundbreaking. We have a wonderful project going on the Monte Vista campus, and welcome everyone to come to that ceremony at 5:30. During the remainder of next week, we are completing the first quarter of school and getting ready for fall break. There will be parent-teacher conferences or academic parent-teacher team meetings during the latter part of the week. And on Friday, our students and teachers have the opportunity to have fall break, which will be the week of October 6th through 10th. Students will also have that following Monday off while teachers prepare for the second quarter. And that will then bring us to our next governing board meeting, which will be held on October 14th. So again, if you're out in the evening and would like to have some important, either receive some important information or see what's happening at Monte Vista School, we welcome everyone to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyle. Governing board members, do you have anything to report?
Madam President, just really quickly, if you don't mind. I just wanted to say thank you in a public forum to the administrators and teachers and students at Creighton, Papago, Monte Vista, LCK, Biltmore Prep, and Mackin. They've been kind enough to let me on their campuses in the last few weeks to do my site visits, and I'm looking forward to visiting Excellencia and Loma Linda at the end of this week and then rounding out Gateway. We got a little rained out on that first great flood of the last 100 years, so our schedule got a little thrown off. But I've had an opportunity to really have some great conversations with our leaders and with teachers and seeing some fabulous instruction taking place in our classrooms. So just wanted to report that if you haven't already scheduled your site visits, it's, AHELP has been an amazing support to me in doing that. But most importantly, I wanted to say thank you to those sites for hosting because they are always very gracious.
Anyone else?
Just like to say thank you to Hildy for passing along to us and for Hilda and uploading to Board Docs the information from the law seminar or the legal conference that ASB put on. I have not been going through all of them, but a good deal of the first day at least. And those were very helpful materials.
Thank you. Anyone else? Next. Are we beaming to another place? Next, we have approval of consent agenda.
Madam President, I'd like to pull item C just for a clarifying question.
Okay, would you like to make a motion with that pulled, item pulled?
I move the governing board approve consent to items A through I, except for item C in accordance with policy BEDV-R.
A second. All those, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item number C, letter C, travel request for NSBA conference in Nashville.
So I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. If, based on this request, I'm assuming that Hilda is the only one of our administrative team that's asking to go, or just at this point, Hilda's the only one asking? And then just for a future request, I appreciate having the account codes listed, but I have no idea what those refer to. So if we could in parentheses identify what that long string of numbers is associated with, whether it's M&O or title dollars or whatever the case might be, that would help just in providing some more transparency and clarification. But that was my own.
Thank you. Enjoy some Goo Goo clusters while you're there. I love those candies. All right, next personnel, we have just.
So I move that we approve consent agenda item C in accordance with policy BEDV-R.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next under personnel, we have discussion and possible direction on revisions to the standard evaluation system for teachers. Dr. Lugo, I believe you had a presentation or a response to governing board questions. Thanks.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, and Cabinet. Thank you for allowing me to assist with the continued discussion of our standard evaluation system for teachers. And Mr. Dupin is also here in the wings to assist with any questions that you may have. So there are a couple of topics that I'd like to cover to make sure that everybody has an understanding of our current standard evaluation system and the requirements of the law and the Arizona Department of Education framework for measuring teacher effectiveness. You should have received the framework as well as the proposed standard evaluation system and an overview of the Arizona Department of Education's SLOs. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for discussion. So as a reminder, we'll take a quick look at the timeline that since the last adoption of our standard evaluation system, which, oh, thanks Kevin, I'm not that tech savvy. Supposed to use this. Okay. For our standard evaluation system that was adopted in 2013. You can see that the evaluation committee had met throughout the year in order to gather feedback and make recommendations. Both committee members and our administration received in-service from the Arizona Department of Education, either by attending the summit or Virginia Sedola and Susan Poole from the ADE actually came and did a training with our evaluation committee. And this training really was, we were looking at it to solve some problems for Group B, yet the student learning objectives are also used for Group A teachers. So at our last meeting, we had conversations about some proposed changes, and since then, upon hearing where the board was at, we figured we needed more intensive discussion on SLOs, so we're working with the Department of Education, and the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment team has attended their training. Additionally, the CINA team met with ATI to explore possibilities in order to make more transparent the calculations behind the evaluation system so that teachers really understood which points were attributed for their final performance classification. So then we're here tonight to continue on with the discussion and hear the governing board's direction on how you would like your evaluation system for teachers to look. And just as a reminder, our next meeting will be October 14th. So hopefully between then we can meet with the evaluation committee and gather teacher input and then be able to bring back a final recommendation to the board. On October 15th, a declaration of our curricular alignment with the Common Core or the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards, as well as our alignment of our evaluation system to the ADE framework is due to the Arizona Department of Education. So as a brief reminder, the Arizona Revised Statute mandates that our our data for our teacher evaluation instrument includes student academic progress from between 33 to 50% of evaluation outcomes. Our current is we're looking at 45% and 50% being on observation. The Arizona Department of Education gives further guidance on the definition of academic progress. So what you'll note is that the measurement of student academic performance. These measurements shall include it's real important to notice the shall include the amount of academic growth, and that's defined as a change in student achievement between 2 points in time. And then it further reads that it also may include measures of academic performance. So those two little tiny words, may and shall, have a lot of influence on the frameworks that can be implemented. Here's kind of a 30,000-foot view of the Arizona Department of Education's model. You've seen our model. It varies a little bit, where we have on the teaching performance side 55%. The student academic progress side, we have 33%. And it's important to note that our 33% is based solely on growth. And then the 17%, we do not utilize surveys for our teacher evaluation, yet we do for the principal evaluation. That's a 10% block to encourage collaboration, and that is based on our pre-test, post-tests. This is from the framework, and I put it in here because I thought it might be a good starting point to assist with clarity for teachers in knowing exactly how many points each section of their evaluation might be attributed to the end goal. The performance classifications that have been adopted by the Arizona Department of Education, you've seen these before, being highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective. And at our last governing board meeting, we presented the number of teachers who fell in the different performance classifications. Some districts have adopted multiple levels to their classifications, yet we are required to report only to those 4 levels. But that might be something that the board might want to engage in conversation. Do we want to add levels and then figure out how they get reported? Okay, so our standard evaluation system and alignment. So currently, administrators are using the latest adoption, which was adopted last year in the fall, to conduct their observations for informal and formal observations. We do have 33, we actually have 35% based on individual classroom data, so we comply there. 100% is based on growth, yet only 20% is required to be based on growth. And we reflect the Arizona Department of Education with some differences. Survey data, as we talked about, is not included. Student learning objectives are not included, yet the team recommended them for Group B teachers, and proficiency, academic proficiency levels are not included. So one of the recommendations coming out of this evening would be to make sure that we provide information that we can bring back to the evaluation committee, get teachers' input, and that's required by ARS, I think it's 203, and make sure that we then bring you a final product that reflects what the board wishes. So if you'd like, I thought it would be wise to give you a little more information of what SLOs are, student learning objectives. This information was presented both to Leadership Council and Group B teachers. This is a shortened version of that, just to give you an understanding of what student learning objectives are. So really what they do is they allow the teachers to engage further in the process of setting goals for their classroom based on their content area, based on their area of expertise, as well as student data. So I think it's really important to know what they are, and more importantly, what they're not. So they're measures of academic student growth and achievement. So two goals will be measured. What they're not is assessments over individual use of studies. They're really meant to assess the standards or teaching to the test. It's also very important to note that they are not based on IEP goals, and so that there's a broader look for the students. So here is the model presented by the Arizona Department of Education. You can see that it's very much in line with the school improvement model and continuous improvement. First, determining students' level of preparedness is what do we expect students to know, learn, and be able to do, and choosing quality assessments. So how will we know that they learned it? And then what do we do when they don't learn it? How do we respond to those students, and how do we push those students who have already mastered the skill? So on that step one, the determining students' level of preparedness, it's recommended that teachers use multiple sets of data to determine which students are at a low level of preparedness, meaning they require intensive intervention in order to reach the prerequisite skills and the standards, students who are right on course where they need to be, and students who have already mastered the standards. In choosing quality assessments, it's important to know that the more an assessment has been utilized, the greater level of confidence for validity and reliability. So we have some performance-based assessments that our music teachers and our art teachers engaged in creating, and I think they're put a lot of hard work into that, yet the level of confidence is quite a bit lower than a Stanford 9 or Ames or a Zella assessment. So the different types of assessments that we're looking at here is giving a baseline assessment and or collecting information for performance and knowing where to start with the students. And then along the way, always checking for how students are doing. And that's not just in a written paper assessment, but that is every day, every 5 minutes, where the teacher is checking on who's on track and responding to where they need to be. And then in the end, looking at a summative assessment. We need to be very cognizant of not having that summative assessment so late that we can't compile the data for evaluation, because that's a glitch that we ran into before. So here are those 3 points again. So setting the SLO targets, this is a more complex process than just having an achievement goal and a growth goal. Teachers actually engage in setting these targets, especially for their growth goals, which once you determine the student's level of preparedness, you'll have 3 goals to work on there. So this is a complex process. The achievement statements, we're very much looking at getting to mastery. We've worked a long time with West Ed and have always said, 80-85% is mastery. When going to the Department of Education and their in-service, they said, well, you might want to start a little lower with your achievement statement at this time to make sure it's obtainable, or you might want to look at different types of achievement statement. You don't want to have low expectations, yet you also don't want to make it unattainable for your teachers. So their example on this slide is, starting at the 70% and then each year ratcheting it up in a different level. So this might read that, so at the end, 80% of the students will score at least 75% on the end of the history exam. And those are, the achievements are determined at a district level. Unlike the growth statements that are looking at the level of preparedness of the class as a whole, and teachers, basically what they do is they take their class roster, they rank their students high to low, determine where the cut scores are, and then determine their growth statements based on the cut scores and based on the assessments. So in the end, it looks all really simple when you have a 4-point rubric, and they're recommending if you would get 4 points if 190 to 100% of the students met the SLOs, meaning they met the achievement statement and they met the growth statement. Here's the hesitation with implementing the SLOs this year, if it were implemented on a mandatory basis, is if you look at the ADE's recommended timeline, we're in right now at the end of September, and we have collected some baseline data. Teachers have not engaged in the activities of determining the levels of preparedness. They have not engaged in, and it's a very high level activity of the quality assessment piece, yet we do have some good assessments in place, and they have not yet set SLOs. So once you hit second quarter, you're really looking at refining that process. So there are some challenges with implementation of this and timelines. So now I will step aside and let the board engage in discussion on the academic progress. This is what I heard from the last meeting. I'm sure there's other topics to discuss, looking at academic progress and the growth as well as proficiency, the understandability and the transparency of the document. Confusion of the teachers right now, what I'm hearing is, are we doing SLOs or are we not doing SLOs? And then implementation of professional development and then taking it back to the committee. I don't know, this document was uploaded yesterday, took some time. I think this might help frame your conversation. It's was developed to help with that transparency and help with the understanding. You can see that it's broken into Group A teachers, and then underneath there it lists who they are, 1st through 6th grade teachers, math, language arts, and reading. And those teachers have valid and reliable assessment data that we feel that they can be Group A. Group B teachers, we're with kindergarten, special area, special education, our interventionists, and our middle grade science and social studies. It's important that you know that we have been moving towards moving people out of Group B into Group A. Most recently, it would be 1st grade. Then the next column is that piece of the pie, that 35%, where we're looking at assessment data, both state assessment data for Group A and district assessment data for Group B, and then the possibility of student learning objectives for Group A and Group B. You'll notice on Group B, they don't have, for the individual classroom data, state assessment data. The next section is that 10% of the pie to promote collaboration. Here is, they're both mirror images of each other. One thing that was noted is Group B teachers currently only have the pre-post data from the school-wide data. They do not have the AIMS data attributed to them. It's an interpretation of the law says, or the framework says, if the data is available. Well, do we think Group B teachers have that data available to them, or but it's for us to collaborate. You know, that's a conversation to be had. But I think that's something that would be very wise to have in there. And this school level data can very easily be ratcheted up both to the principal of that school as well as all of our district people get a district aggregate of that data. And then the 55% for based on the individual teaching performances, that is very similar to what the Department of Education has with the preparing for instruction, implementation of instruction, as well as classroom management. The only difference in our system is some of the language we're a little bit behind in the 2007 adoption, as well as the professional standards has not been included because our attorney recommends that we use, if people aren't living up to their professional standards, that we utilize progressive discipline. Okay.
Madam President, Dr. Lugo, excuse me. I have, first question is something that just kind of never really popped into my head previously, and I should know, but prior to this process, what was the annual teacher evaluation like? What
evaluation. Teachers were evaluated twice a year with a formal evaluation with multiple informals, unless they made it to what we called SES Level 2, Standard Evaluation System Level 2. Then they created a plan as well. They had informal, unannounced observations, but they created a plan based on their students' data and worked towards the receiving those goals, and those were reviewed by the principal.
Okay. You mentioned peer review, and I saw that as I was reviewing the information. What does, I know that we do that in medical clinic, which I work with. It's basically living up to what are the standards of the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force for other basically quality of care that we expect to ensure that it's being done as it should. And it's, you're asked to evaluate a case that a peer had, you don't know who it is, and so you're just looking through the case of what was done. What is a peer review? What would that be like? And it wasn't something that we had listed that we had done, but how would that be done?
That's a good question. We have not, we looked at it on a cursory level. We had a conversation way back, and it was very quickly something that teachers, that I felt when we were talking to the committee, that teachers did not feel comfortable in reviewing other people's work in that way and giving feedback. That's something we can explore if you'd like, but we have not given an in-depth look at this.
And then just one final question for now. You talked about SLOs and the process, and I don't remember the word that you used to describe it, but basically it sounds like it's not something that's just done overnight easily. So I'm interested in knowing I'm interested in knowing, first of all, what other districts are doing in terms of SLOs. And the other thing is, are we, in terms of what is being proposed, leaving aside SLOs, is this a new process? Are we adding additional data beyond what we collect, additional processes beyond what we do for student achievement? What we feel is necessary to measure student achievement, are we adding new processes in addition to that, specifically for teacher evaluation?
This would be adding new processes to that. The SLOs would be. The Group B teachers, specifically those teachers in technology, some special education and some art teachers, really had concerns, and very valid concerns, about their assessment, and especially when their kids topped out on their assessment, and because ours is based on growth, so there was no place to grow higher. So that tells us either the assessment does not have enough rigor, or those kids. So for example, the technology teacher brings a perfect example. She's been at that school for teaching technology for a number of years. So she's been working with those kiddos who hit in the 5th grade. They already knew a lot of the assessments. So she did not get all the points that she wanted because they topped out. So allowing her to set different objectives for the different levels would actually be good. One of the proposals, it's not even a proposal, one of the topics for conversation is, do we make SLOs optional for this year and let people who wish to engage in the process do so, and those who are comfortable with the way they were assessed last year opt out. And I don't know how many districts are using them. It's growing.
So, Dr. Ludo, I'm trying to connect the framework documents. First of all, I really appreciate this summary handout. I think that makes it much clearer and more closer to providing clarity to the board as to what we're going to evaluate teachers on, but more importantly to teachers so that they understand what their evaluation system looks like. So I'm trying to reconcile between this document, which now is organized in a similar fashion to the actual framework document that you included in our board materials. And so I'm looking specifically at page 17 of, or I'm sorry, page 13 of the State Department of Education's framework. And that's a table that looks almost identical to what you have, as it's describing the type of data that should be included in teacher evaluations and communicating what's available for Group A and Group B. And I thought I heard you say that there was a room for interpretation about what data should be used for Group B, and I'm trying to understand where you see that you have latitude, because in that chart, it specifically shows that school level data must be used. It has required in bold and underlined as a section of the Group B teacher evaluation. I don't disagree that that's not the best data to use in evaluating teachers who don't have valid and reliable data, but that in essence is the whole controversy about the evaluation requirements, right? That teachers are going to be held accountable for the overall performance of students in math and English language arts when they don't necessarily have a direct teaching opportunity for that. So could you just clarify, we'll start with Group B, where you feel like there's latitude in our framework, not including school level data as part of the Group B evaluation?
So we're utilizing school level data. What we're not using is the state assessment because it was last year's data. When we look at the Ames data that we incorporate in teachers' evaluation, it's from the year prior. So with our school level data, we're utilizing school level data, yet it is not based on the state data. So we would be closer to the framework should we incorporate state level data.
So I guess my clarification is that in our SES document that had the highlights for Group B teachers, it very clearly says that it's classroom level data only. So am I misreading or missing a section where, or is that because we transitioned to this framework?
Yeah.
Where is classroom level data included in a Group B teacher's evaluation?
It's the 10%. So with the SES that was proposed and the current SES that's adopted, the classroom level data, there's 35% on the individual classroom data, then there's 10% on the school level data. The school level data currently only utilizes our pre-post data, which is the same year data, but it does not incorporate the Ames data from the prior year. So that is what I'm saying. In order to get closer to the Arizona Department of Education's ADA, the framework that they're proposing, is we may want to look at that school level data, incorporating more than just pre-post assessments, but incorporating also the Ames proficiency or Ames student growth percentiles, as well as the AZELA, as well as the pre-post, and possibly even the school labels. Those are some of the portions that are currently on the principal's evaluation that are not on the teacher's evaluation.
Because I would suggest that if we look at page 23 of the framework document, again, the first bullet is when available, meaning when we have data from statewide assessments, they shall be used to inform the evaluation process. I don't think that there's room for interpretation that means in a Group B teacher's evaluation that state assessment data, i.e. the Ames test, which we're not administering it anymore, so whatever the new test is when the state board decides to pick one, shall be used. So I think it's connecting the different pieces in a very confusing and long state framework document to help understand what the intent of both the legislation and the state board's position is. And that is that Ames data or our state assessment data is intended to be used in our evaluations. Now, we can certainly go beyond that, and I appreciate the menu of options that you've laid out. But I think that kind of got to the crux of the concern that I raised last time, when we were talking about this, is that because of our reliance on growth, and I'm speaking to you, but you're certainly representing a whole group of people, so for to pick on you.
I'm not feeling picked on.
But our reliance on growth, which I value, I think it should be a significant weight in our teachers' evaluation, but the absence of an achievement indicator, did our students reach proficiency metric, I think that's resulted in teacher performance results that aren't in alignment with the reality of the performance of our students on external assessments. And frankly, they're not even in alignment with the performance or proficiency scores on our benchmark assessments. So I think that's really where I appreciate the direction we're going, which is to have it be an and, that it's growth and proficiency. I noticed that there's a blank percentage proficiency on the handout, and I'd love the board to really have a conversation around what do we feel like is an appropriate target. If it's 80%, is it an absolute threshold? Is it whatever points are available? There's a percentage that teachers can earn of those points. I think there's a lot of ways to do the math. And I know Eric and the team have been working with ATI to kind of figure some of those pieces out. So I'd be happy to listen to sort of where that conversation's going. But I think failure to include proficiency in our teachers' evaluations is really not providing an accurate reflection of the performance of our teachers.
I can see a little bit of both sides of that issue. I think if we have a student that comes in and is 4 grade levels behind, and at the end of the school year they're 2 grade levels behind, I think that teacher's probably done a really great job. I also, though, am cognizant of the example, Dr. Lugo, that you raised, that if we have students who come in that are highly achieving, or at least as we're cutting the data, you may have teachers who are adversely impacted by having the just growth. And I don't know, is there a way that we can take it into effect so it's not one or the other? And I guess there's the split the baby approach and say it's half growth and half achievement, but I don't know that necessarily reflects all the efforts of a teacher either. So that's just kind of my concern. And I realize that this is very much an evolving tool, and I'm sorry if it feels like you're a guinea pig in the process. But.
No, and this has not gone through the committee. This is something that was created recently.
Did the committee decide in terms of, or what was the discussion in terms of what percent should be growth and what?
That discussion hasn't been had. This is based on new information on the conversation that we had before. The discussion on growth versus achievement set scores was had a number of years ago when we first did the pilot. And at that time, it was really looking at growth and wanting to make sure that our students were growing and our teachers were helping them grow. So now we need to make sure that we also have the achievement should the board wish to go that route.
Well, and Susan, in your sort of the Department of Ed page, that one handout on the PowerPoint slide, too many windows open, so I can't. I'm sure.
Is it the orange one?
Yeah, the nice little. Yes. So I think this is sort of the direction. We don't need to mirror this exactly, but I think this is sort of the direction around transparency and making it clear to folks. And so you can see, frankly, in the framework, it wasn't even realized that growth in the current version it wasn't even conceptualized when this framework was first created. And this framework itself has gone through lots of levels of iteration at the state level, in part because of our waiver with the federal government, adding growth in specifically. But I can tell you that there were lots of districts in the first 2 years of this implementation that for some unknown reason to most everybody that has common sense didn't use any growth measures, and all they had was achievement scores on Ames. And so that was a problem for Marty Duncan, and he came back and said, no, it shouldn't be an option to include growth. It must be, a mandate that it is achievement and growth. So, we certainly want to be on the other end of that, which is include growth and non-achievement, but this layout gives us some things to consider. And I don't think we need to get in the weeds about, which mathematical formula we want to use, but you can see one of the options is, just a straight percent passing and assigning points to the teacher based on their range. But there's other ways to, slice and dice proficiency data. I've seen in school districts that they take that proficiency score, so let's say it's the percentage of students passing in 1 year, for the sake of conversation, 2013. And then in that same teacher's classroom, the improvement in terms of the overall percentage of students passing in that teacher's classroom. So it is still taking proficiency as a measure and saying we want our students to be proficient, but we're going to give you credit for getting more of your kids to be proficient, which is sort of a backdoor into another growth measure, but also bringing in that absolute proficiency data. Another way that I've seen it done, and I think this is one of the areas that we still need to refine, is it's not clear to me, having read the document, how many total points a teacher can earn in our evaluation. So it's hard to identify what percentage 45 is, because I don't know what the total is. So I'm missing some variables in the equation. So if, just for the sake of argument, we had 100 points total that teachers could earn in the overall evaluation, then we could say, I'm just picking arbitrary numbers for the sake of discussion, 10% of the data has to be from proficiency. So I could earn up to 10 points based on the percent of my students that pass in my class. Remember, this is mostly for group A teachers because they have valid and reliable data in their content area. So you could create a scale that says if I earn, if I have 85% of my kids passing in my class, which is very localized to me, then I can earn 85% of those 10 points. Or if I have 40% of the students in my class passing the Ames test or our state assessment, I can only earn 4.5 points of the total that's available. And so there are lots of ways to use achievement data in our evaluation. I think for what I'd like the board to, discuss is the direction we want the staff to take around, do we have an opinion about the percentage? Do we have an opinion about the method? Or do we just feel comfortable saying, go back and have a conversation about you must include student achievement data for group A and group B teachers in the levels where it's appropriate, so that we have a balanced approach to teacher evaluation. That's sort of the direction I feel comfortable, giving to the board, to the administration, but I'm certainly only one member of the board.
Dr. Lugo, so you mentioned that the committee has not met yet so far, correct?
The committee hasn't met on that last slide to actually review some of the things that I took away from the last meeting to try to resolve some of those concerns, and I haven't run that by the committee.
I think I would feel comfortable with the committee having a meeting
at some point and coming back with a recommendation to the board as the committee. I feel comfortable in the professionality of the persons on the committee who are in the classroom, some and some not, but to make that decision.
And then, can I ask for a clarifying question? Do you believe that that committee is the task to figure out what percentage and by what method achievement data will be included, or whether it should be included? So just to give specific direction to Susan and the committee, is the committee working to determine what percentage and what method achievement data, so a percentage of kids passing the state assessment, is going to be included, or is the committee discussing whether or not we should include a percentage of students passing an assessment?
I would feel comfortable if the committee was to make the determination of both of them, actually, if they want to make the determination that, well, I believe in it, it's already, the student achievement is already in, but we're discussing how to measure student achievement, and especially with different types of students, the high achieving and the lower achieving. So I would feel comfortable if they came up with the determinations.
So just to clarify, student absolute achievement is not in our evaluation system currently as it's drafted. Student growth on many measures is included in our evaluation system. And so that's the interpretation aside, there are several places in the framework that is very clear that state assessment scores shall be used in all teachers' evaluation. So when we have to sign a declaration as individual governing board members that our system is in alignment with the state board framework, currently I can't sign that declaration because it is not in alignment in several places. So that's, now the draft that Susan's presented, that one-page overview, does bring it into alignment. But there's the missing piece around the how proficiency data is used, which I do agree should be the conversation of the committee. But I just want to make sure we're sending very clear messages, because there's not very much time in our timeline to get that committee together, have the conversation, and then bring information back to us so that we can stay in compliance mode,
So
as I understand it.
the more direction and clarity that the board can give on what they would like to see, the better I can work with the committee and say, this is what the board wants.
Definitely, we need to align with the state standards for it.
So on this, where I hear the question being is, should we continue completely on growth, or do we do some measure of growth in addition to some measure of academic performance, which equates to a measure of academic achievement, whether it's your students were achieving at this rate of proficiency 1 year and you've increased it, which is also a growth measure, so much to the next year, or all of your X amount of students need to reach a benchmark of 75% or 80%. And if the governing board has a percentage in mind that we can start the conversation on, then I can talk to the committee, and then we can talk about it and say, here's what we recommend based on our data and based on our understanding. So the more information that I can take back, the more grateful I will be in moving.
I'm fine with incorporating both sets of data, recognizing both achievement data and growth data, recognizing that this is a tool that is in progress. I hope that is communicated out to teachers. But I would really, I feel like I couldn't make a strong determination, is it 80% growth, is it 20% growth, without really looking at how people would be affected in specific instances. And that's where, as a governing board member, I really feel that I rely upon the feedback of a committee such as this to try as close as possible to reach consensus.
should we choose an ultimate achievement score of 80%. The bell curve that we currently have that's way off to the right, where almost all of our teachers are highly effective and effective, would possibly move over more to the center.
And I guess it is a little bit of a question of, should our evaluation tool in terms of how we calculate teachers' performance, should it be exactly aligned to what the labeling system, the letter grade labeling system is for the schools and how they are? And for sake of consistency and not confusing people, I can certainly see an argument for doing that, but it's also our opportunity as a district to say what we want to do. How do we really want to evaluate our teachers and communicate their effectiveness to them? And is it necessarily just what the state says? So I guess I'm glad that we've explored this, and I think it does create probably questions for a lot of people. If we have a district that's ranked as a C, but we have most of our teachers who are the top 2 levels on the evaluation system, I don't necessarily have a problem with that per se, if we have a way of backing that up and saying, look, here's how we cut the data, and here's why we think this is an effective way. But I think we need to be prepared to come out with a message and say exactly that, because people are going to have the same questions that the governing board did.
So I agree with Matt. I think that if I were assured that our framework, when it includes absolute proficiency in some way, aligns to the framework that we're all signing off on that we have complied with, and we still end up with the majority of our teachers in the highly effective or effective classification, then I feel like we then do have what you're saying is the data to back it up. I think absent of including and balancing some, absolute outcome data for our students, I don't feel as a governing board member I can do that right now. I think a longer term conversation, not for tonight, is as a board, evaluation is designed to improve teacher practice and administrator practice. And I do think that if I remember the percentage correctly, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, this last round, we identified 54% of our teachers as not just effective, but highly effective in their craft. And to me, if I were, like I said last time, if I got a highly effective rating, and by the way, I'm a first-year teacher straight out of an intern program, and I've never done anything more than, a 2-week student teaching stint. I got a lot of support from my school district, which I know we do. I think there are some teachers, maybe none of them employed in our district, but some teachers who might say, I rock, I'm not effective, and you told me so. Why are you on my case to, do more, push more, go to more PD, go to do these things? I'm, kind of being a little flip about it. But I do worry the mixed messages that we send to our teachers. That we say on one hand in their formal evaluation, you're the highest performing designation that we could expect from a teacher in our district. And by the way, you achieved it in your first year of your teaching profession. And at the same time, your kids aren't performing at the levels we need you to get them to perform. And we need you to do more and more and more without the, compensation for that. I just don't see how we can keep doing that without teachers, throwing up their hands and saying, what more do you want me to do? And how can I get better when I basically just top the charts on this evaluation? That's, part of not just the student achievement piece, but a worry about the messages that we send to our teachers. Because this tool should help them identify the areas where they can grow. And if I come out of the chute highly effective, I don't know that we have enough data to discriminate in areas where they can continue to push themselves and grow in their profession.
The thing is, you can be highly effective twice a year, right? I mean, and that's basically what the SES is. That's why this whole, I know that we have to have this discussion, but it's flawed
from the gate, because there's absolutely no way that you can effectively evaluate the effectiveness of a teacher. I mean, unless there were some kind of, computer sensors all over your entire classroom, all over your students, all over me, it's impossible. And I think our teachers understand that when you're teaching the population that we teach, you can be. I was highly effective today in my classroom. I was highly effective because I got kids who during the first week of school wouldn't even pick up a pencil, and now they're writing. Are they going to be able to write at the 10th grade level when they come to me in the 4th grade level? Probably not. Not by the end of the school year. So I don't think that teachers. I think that teachers are smart enough to understand what they do in the classroom that makes them effective, and that it's not necessarily always related to, what our school grade is or what our students' test scores are. It's so much more than that, and it's truly impossible to measure. I know that we have to do it, so, I guess that we should include both things, right, because that's what the state wants us to do, but I don't think there's any confusion in teachers' minds, that they know what's going on and when they're highly effective, even if other people don't think that they're being highly effective.
Any other feedback we want to give to Suzanne for the committee?
I guess, do you have, are there still any outstanding questions?
Maybe I can recap what I think I hear, and then you
Good
can correct me. So what I think I hear is bring the document to the committee for their review and their input. Have a conversation about including, because I didn't hear an overwhelming not to include proficiency. Let's talk about what proficiency might look like, what percentage it might look like, and how can we get there. And possibly have a conversation, time permitting, on should there be more levels added, and then a way for those levels of academic achievement, performance classifications, and then have a way to transpose that into reporting to the state.
So I would just clarify, I wouldn't spend time at this point thinking through adding more proficiency levels for teachers. I think that might be a longer term conversation. I think the short term is really figuring out, okay, when we add proficiency, what does it look like, and what percent, how will we measure it, and then how much will it be weighed? I would like you, and this is a technical question, so not for the committee, but I think the committee needs to have this answered for them to do their work, is what's the total number of points I can earn as a teacher? So that the committee can actually do the math to figure out if I, weigh this at 10%, that gives a teacher the ability to earn this number of points. Because I think that sort of is inherent in maybe some of our struggle is we don't know how much it weighs because we don't know how much I can earn as a classroom teacher. And I know we didn't really talk about it out loud, but in a conversation, I know that one of the suggestions for transparency was to also ask ATI to give us the format, like kind of the summary format for each type of teacher position designation. So in our SES document, it would make it significantly longer, but that could be in an appendix. So that if I'm a 3rd grade ELD teacher and I'm assigned to that position, I could flip to that page and see, okay, as a 3rd grade ELD teacher, I am considered Group A or Group B. These are the data that I have available to me in my classroom, component. These are the data that will be used for my, the school level evidence, and this is how much, teacher performance weighs into my evaluation. I think that would be huge in terms of transparency to our teachers.
That's in progress.
Yeah, I know it is, but I just want to make sure the rest of the board knew that you're going to see a much longer document, but to make it far more transparent to teachers, because there are, somebody said, I think 12 different kind of position sheets or formulas or whatever goes into it. So this is certainly a complex endeavor, to say the least.
Anything else you'd like the committee to explore?
Thank you for addressing the concerns that were brought up at the last board meeting. We appreciate that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Next, we have a presentation on teaching, empowering, leading, and learning, the TEL survey. Again, we have Dr. Lugo.
So, good evening again. Thank you for having me back. I also would like to introduce co-presenters, Mr. James Diaz, CEA President, and Mrs. Erica Lozano. She's a Title I facilitator at Loma Linda School. I would like to warn you, there are over 40 slides, so I'm not going to hit the 20-minute mark unless we're under 30 seconds per slide. But at any time, if you would like to skip some of the direct results because you all received the TEL survey, I will not be hurt if you say, Susan, skip to the chase. And let's talk, because I know you've all poured over the data already. The way my team here and I have analyzed these results is we looked at each table and we picked out the highs and the lows. So we won't go over every indicator. Yet it's also important for the board to know that this survey does take it does take time for our teachers to take it. So when we give direction about how often we should engage in this survey, we want to make sure we give teachers adequate time to take that. So a quick recap. Oh, I'm supposed to use this thing. It comes out of the New Teacher Center, and 11 states are currently administering it, and they are administering it every other year. And there are a number of schools that are in responding to this survey. This is a survey that we used to call the Governor's Survey, and we were the top district with like a 98% rate. So our survey administration, we made a goal for ourselves. It was jointly done with CEA and the administration of having 85% of our teachers take the survey. We hit our goal with 86%. You can see to the right which schools one received an ice cream party. You do whatever it takes to get the surveys done. And actually, I think we passed out ice cream to 3 or 4 schools. It was administered in the 4th quarter, and we did really stress that it would maintain the anonymity with the survey so people felt comfortable. There are 8 constructs with the survey that we explore, and an additional questions in the end with regards to mentoring of new teachers. And you'll remember that the mentor program last year was very limited, and the FAST mentor program was really only for the 1st quarter formally done. So time is one of the constructs. Oh, I better follow along because my notes are here. It's too small up there. So that statewide analysis showed that had the most constraints on teachers. So if we look at the data, the high points were that 71% of the teachers who took the survey agreed or strongly agreed that teachers had a sufficient instructional time to meet the needs of their students. The 2 lowest areas that were the same percentage, 58%, disagreed or strongly disagreed that classroom sizes were reasonable to meet the needs of all students, and that non-instructional time was sufficient. Additionally, 51% of the teachers reported that they spent more than 5 hours per week on school-related activities outside of the school work day. 21% of the 51% spent more than 10 hours per week. So with regards to facilities and resources, across state analysis, that overall teachers stated that they do have the supplies and resources needed. If you look at what our teachers are telling us, 92% of the teachers felt that they had appropriate access to reliable communication technology, such as phones, faxes, and emails. and adequate space to work productively. 86% felt that the school environment was well maintained, and 84% felt that the physical environment in the classroom supported teaching and learning. On the lower end in this area, 53% of the teachers did not feel that they had sufficient access to appropriate instructional material, and 25% felt that they did not have sufficient access to instructional technology, including software, printers, and internet access. When it comes to community involvement and support, the cross-state analysis perceives that there's a high community support and involvement. From our survey, we see that 81% of the teachers felt that their schools do a good job of encouraging parent involvement, and 82% of the teachers felt that their schools provide parents with useful information about student learning. On the other hand, 51% felt that parents were not influential decision makers in the school, and 41% did not feel that parents support teachers or that they are contributing to their success with students. When it comes to managing student conduct, overall findings were that educators agree that conditions are in place to manage student conduct and support learning. When we analyzed our data on the high end, 91% of our students and teachers agreed or strongly agreed that they felt safe in the work environment. 84% felt that students at their school understood the expectations for conduct, and 82% felt that policies and procedures about student conduct are clearly understood by faculty. The two lowest areas were 32% of the teachers disagreed or strongly disagreed that the students at their school follows the rules of conduct, and 30% of the teachers reported that they felt school administration did not consistently enforce the rules for student conduct. Now let me turn it over to Mrs. Lozano, and she's going to share a little bit about teacher leadership.
Good evening. So I'm going to speak specifically about teacher leadership and school leadership before I hand things over to Mr. Diaz. Specifically with teacher leadership, we saw on the positive that 80% of our teachers agree or strongly agree that they are encouraged to participate in leadership activities. 70% of teachers believe that they are seen as effective leaders on campus. In terms of our areas of improvement, 30% of our teachers do not believe that teachers are relied upon to make decisions about educational issues at their sites, and 38% believe that there is not an effective decision-making process in place that involves teachers. Continuing with teacher leadership, we also saw on the more positive side of things that 59% of our teachers play a moderate or a large role in our continuous improvement process. We also saw that 58% of our teachers play a moderate or large role in student discipline procedures. For our areas of improvement in this final piece of teacher leadership, 78% of our teachers say that they play a very small role in how the budget will be spent on each site, and 66% of teachers play a small role in choosing the professional development content that they are involved in. Moving on to school leadership. Again, starting with the positives. 93% of teachers believe that they are held to high professional standards, and 86% of our teachers believe that the feedback that they receive helps them to improve their instruction in the classroom. And in terms of our areas of improvement, 43% of teachers do not feel that they have an appropriate level of influence in decisions made at their sites, and 28% believe that they do not feel that there is an atmosphere of trust or mutual respect at their sites. And I'll pass things along to Mr. Diaz to talk about professional development.
I was tasked to go through and talk about professional development. Hopefully I figured this gizmo thing out. Okay, so basically the stuff up there for the cross-state analysis, you say majority of educators across states agree that professional development is aligned with school improvement plans. However, few agree that professional development is differentiated. Let's see if this works. Okay, all right. So some of the highs here, 73% of teachers are encouraged to reflect on their own practice. 72% of the teachers felt an appropriate amount of time is provided for professional development. Professional development enhances teachers' abilities to improve student learning. So there's just some good things. The lows, 58% of the teachers disagree or strongly disagree that professional development is differentiated to meet the needs of individual teachers. 52% disagreed or strongly disagreed that professional development is evaluated and results are communicated to teachers. And then, next part here, 65% want PD on Common Core standards, no surprise there. 61% want professional development on integrating technology on instruction. 60% would like professional development on special education on students with disabilities. And on the low ends, 71% felt felt they did not need professional development on classroom management techniques. 68% felt they did not need professional development on student assessment. And then now turn it over to Susan for instructional practices and support.
Okay, so make sure I'm at the right spot. Okay, so with the construct of instructional practices and support, the cross-state analysis indicated that teachers are encouraged to be innovative in the classroom, but they also had challenges receiving state assessment data in time to inform instructional choices. Imagine that. So here, the high areas in general, into all these questions, most people agreed or strongly agreed with the statements. So what we found here on instructional practices and support, all of them were high. The two highest being teachers are required to work hard, 94%, and teachers use assessment data to inform their instruction at 91%. When it comes to teaching conditions, what we found were the high areas. 34% of the teachers indicated that school leadership would influence their willingness to continue teaching at the school, and 23% of the teachers indicated that time during the workday would influence their willingness to continue at the school. I thought this was nice. Overall, my school is a good place to work and learn. 79% of the teachers indicated in the positive that they felt their school is a good place to work and learn. I think our goal should be 100%. And I'm allowing James to take my baby. He reminds me it's our baby on new teacher support.
So we were especially happy to have this be a part of the survey because that is obviously a key category of employees that we want to retain. So new teacher support was a really interesting little endeavor for us when we went through and we were looking at it. So I'll use a space bar. So on the high end, there was, when they were talking about things that were considered good teacher supports, orientation 87%, and common planning time with other teachers. 73% were the highest in new teacher support. The low supports that they felt was reduced workload, 83%, and formal time to meet with mentor during the school hours, which is 74% too. So, and then mentor activities. When this was going on last year, the mentor program was just kind of getting off the ground. So it's clear at this point that the mentor activities were not as strong as we envisioned them to be. But there definitely is some things that are expanding out more this year. So we're hopeful that things will be more positive. On the low end, 76% felt that they were never observed by their mentor teachers. 73% were never were observed by their mentor as well too. So, and then we have the site use of the telesurvey. This is going to be Ms. Lozano.
All right, so this is my favorite part to talk about when it comes to the TEL survey, because this is where we really get to start looking at, okay, we have this data in front of us, now what did our sites sit down and do after we had the data, and we really took that kind of hard look at our areas of improvement and celebrated our strengths and said, where do we go next? Specifically on May 29th of this year at the leadership seminar, we sat down as leadership teams and really looked at those strengths and those areas of improvement and kind of started to look at what next steps we needed to take. And so I'm gonna look at those strengths and challenges with you and also talk to you about what's already in place on each campus to start making improvements in the areas that we didn't do so well in on the survey. I prefer using the clicker. Oh, and one more point. In terms of the continuous improvement plan, we use the results from the TEL survey to help us really look at our system challenges, strengths, and needs, and kind of look at what tweaks we need to make in our continuous improvement plan as Title I facilitators moving into the next academic year. So our overall strengths across all sites were just that teachers feel that their school is a good place to work and learn, like Dr. Lugal just said. Our teachers feel valued as professionals, considered as experts, and they feel that they are recognized for their accomplishments. Areas of improvement though, again, some trends. Our teachers would like more differentiated professional development. They want to be more involved in the decision-making process, including interviews, professional development, leadership, planning, and they want further leadership opportunities. So when it's, I apologize, it looks a little, probably not as blurry on your screen, a little blurry up here. So the schools are grouped kind of based on addressing the trends that we just looked at. Fillmore, Prep, Monte Vista, and Gateway specifically are really focusing on addressing that professional development differentiation need. Fillmore Prep, for example, surveyed their teachers at the beginning of the school year to see what they would like to see presented at professional development sessions. And so on select dates throughout the year, teachers have the choice of going to the professional development that they feel best meets their needs. And then at Monte Vista and at Gateway, they're really helping to plan their planning sessions and providing resources to teachers based on those specific needs that they have for planning and for their development. Specifically with Papago, Loma Linda, and Creighton, they are really looking to inspire that teacher leadership, as are all of our sites. But these were the areas that they chose to focus on at that May 29th leadership seminar. So a couple ways that the sites are focusing on teacher leadership are particularly through professional development facilitation. So looking for those master teachers, not only through classroom observations, but also specifically looking at the CT4S data and determining which students are strong in certain areas that we see a lot of other teachers needing support in, and having those teachers facilitate the professional development sessions to be a model and a guide and a leader for other teachers on campus. A lot of sites are also moving to include teachers in interviews for relevant grade levels, so a 6th grade teacher might be involved in an interview for a potential future teammate of theirs. And then finally, some other areas that were brought up, they weren't as much of an outstanding trend as teacher leadership and differentiated professional development. But parent engagement is always a concern and a topic of discussion in our district, as is the culture and the vision and mission of our schools. So these are some other areas that schools are working to improve. Mackin specifically is involving their parents in their monthly STEM meetings. And Excelencia is currently in the process of revising their vision and mission, and they're involving all teachers in that process and really helping to communicate the process through their Wednesday team meetings. And I'm going to hand things back over to Mr. Diaz.
Okay, so next steps from here on out. We were basically mostly interested in going through and trying to come up with a retention committee, which is, and to come up with concrete types of actions and things that we could go through and try to address the issue of staff retention, appointed by CEA and administration, and to have a cross-section of different grade levels and different schools and stuff that are going to be on the actual committee. The last thing on there is the listening tour. Listening tour, originally, the genesis of it was from actually a CEA stewards meeting that we came up with. And the idea was to have a similar process to what Ms. Lozano was talking about, except at a teacher level. Where you go through and you go to the different sites at all 9 schools and have teachers go through and be present, see some of the same information, go through the same process, and look for trends and things at the teacher level as well too. Caveats are have to make sure that people are trained effectively in order to be able to present it correctly, and also to be able to make sure that it is unbiased information. So it originally started from there, but we're very sensitive to the idea of making sure that it is inclusive. So we wanted to go through and make sure that everybody has an opportunity, and it's not like a CEA label. I'm very sensitive to that idea. We want to make sure that everybody has input, everybody has to go through, and everybody's a part of the process for both, mostly for communication and for transparency's part. So that was kind of the idea that we're going to go through with that too. The implications for use, obvious things, policy creations, meet and confer, district and school improvement data, topics for refinements, professional developments, things like that. So that's the end of our presentation. We're here for questions or discussion at the board's meeting.
Thank you very much. I know that was a lot of work for everybody involved, the teachers too. So any teachers in the room, thank you so much for taking the time and making it a more than 85% survey.
That was especially exciting.
Yes. Yes.
Really, really amazing.
Yes. And I feel very encouraged by the collaboration of the teachers and administration on this process, and the previous slide you just put up with future items. Thank you so much.
I know this is not an action item, it's information presentation. And I just want to point out that sometimes there are things where it's not just the board having to vote on something. And I think it's been made pretty clear that the teacher retention and the work environment are high goals of this board. And I want to thank you, James and Susan in particular, for the frequent, it seems like things have become much more collaborative kind of over the last couple of years. And I do think that we have, we've actually started to see, Susan, the data that you presented last time, some changes in teacher turnover. It may not happen right away, but it is happening. And clearly it's something that a lot of thought has gone into, and I want to thank teachers for providing their feedback. I want to thank you all for doing this, because putting together this survey, because I think it's a very important opportunity, and I hope the teachers know that this wasn't just another survey to fill out, and that the governing board's looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And we all have a very big passion for this, and we work very well together.
Madam President, I think I'm gonna ask a really silly question that I probably should know the answer to. So I'm just throwing it out there. Do all of our teachers have a professional development plan, or I don't necessarily want to call it a growth plan, but a plan that says, here are the needs, here's the PD that I want, here's the PD menu that I can choose from, and here's the sessions that I went to and how did it work? Because I feel like I you to have that be part of the retention committee discussion, because I'm trying to think about how do we effectively differentiate when we don't have a tool to understand what our teachers really need. And if we were thinking about this from a teacher's perspective in the classroom, our teachers have a lot of information and documents and trackers, or whatever you want to call them, about where their kids are and where they want to get them. I feel like maybe that would help us ensure and hold ourselves accountable to differentiating for our teachers. If we had some kind of a document where teachers develop their needs and that's sort of that ongoing piece.
Yeah, my understanding is that the current SES right now has a documented part of the professional development plan where teachers have that ability to go through and lay out some of their ideas and their desires for professional development. I don't know if Dr. Woodward can speak.
That's exactly right, but the portion that is in still need of refinement is looking at what offerings there are. I know the curriculum instruction and assessment team is working very hard to do that, but they do have a plan that lays out, here's the committees that I want to be on professionally, here's the professional development that I'd like to be engaged in, and that's part of it. And it's a conversation that typically takes place with the evaluator and the teacher in the beginning prior to the evaluation.
So then is that maybe an opportunity for improvement where that becomes a more sort of living document that gets monitored over the course? I mean, obviously at the beginning we plan and at the end we see how it goes in the world of evaluation. But I'm sort of envisioning something where a teacher could say to their team leader, to their coach or their mentor or their SAT, the resource support that they have, and say, remember in September I said I really needed this workshop. Here, I know that there are these things happening, or I went to that workshop. I'm trying it out. Will you come see it in my classroom, implement it? So I think something that's a little bit more an ongoing, continuous tool, so that again, we can be sure that it's not just in a wishful thinking kind of way, this is what I'd like to learn, but really hold ourselves to supporting teachers according to the plan that they've written.
Typically, throughout the year, I know at least two, depending on the teacher, there's a midterm part where the teacher goes through and talks about like what are the things that are going well, and in addition, there's a part on there in the document that talks about what kinds of support that you need. My assumption would be that at that point, that would be an opportunity for them to say something similar to what you're talking about when they have the conversation with the administrator.
So I guess my only, again, just to ask you all to have really rich conversations about it, is if we do that and our teachers still say that we don't differentiate their professional development, something's not working in that cycle. Right? So if we have a process and yet our teachers still tell us that we aren't effectively differentiating for them, then either they don't, and part of the other layer is probably that whole trust piece of being able to feel like I can have that conversation with whomever I need to have that conversation with. If I don't feel like I can tell whomever, yes, I have this plan, I don't feel like we're differentiating enough based on my needs at any point in time, then I think we've got some kind of an opportunity to sort of revisit that. I would hate for us to just say, well, yeah, we do that, and still keep getting the same results where teachers are saying, hey, you're not differentiating for me.
Are you implying a disconnect between the things?
There might be an opportunity for improvement is what I'm implying. Thank you all very much.
Now we're moving along to business and plans. We have the request for approval to enter into phase 2 guaranteed maximum pricing for building replacement with core construction for the construction projects at Monte Vista School.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, and Cabinet. First of all, I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to update you on the GMP. I'd like to start off with thanking Dr. Boyle, Dr. Bachner, Mike Anderson, Roy, Ed, Jim McRae, Scott Warner, Cindy. This has been such a collaborative process. We've had so many meetings after meetings, and we have really, everybody has been really involved and worked this through. Very detailed meetings, very detailed questions. And I would also like to thank Core Construction. We had Todd Steffen, he's the director of our CNF Risk Services, Chuck Kaufman. They have a team of Ileana, who's not here, Tom Zamora, and Tim. I was asked not to miss Tim's name because he's 6'8" and 300 pounds. I'm sure I mentioned his name. And Morgan Winslow, we have David Stover, Roxy Morales, Alex Ruiz, and Vince Risley. So overall, I've been involved in a lot of schools, 20 to 21 years, and I've been doing this for a long time. And I truly felt that this was a very interactive, very collaborative process. Not just the team that you see here, but even taking it to the subcontractors. I mean, we had multiple bids, 3 to 5 bids on each line items. Our consultants were involved, a lot of back and forward, so I'm very happy to put that to you. Moving on, before we get to the GNP, we want to take about 2 minutes of your time and show you the renderings, and we have a probably a 40-second movie for you to look at. So just to orient you, we have 26th Street here and Osborne is to the south. So that's the overall bird's eye view or overall floor plan is what we would call that. This is a bird's eye view. Again, you can see the parking lot, 2 classroom buildings, administration. We have the same central spine which we had at Papago, library, gymnasium, and cafeteria. This is the view looking at the gym. Some of the details. Courtyard. And you can see the different colors and materials which we've used, and it's very similar to Papago, but it has its own uniqueness, and it's going to be a great project. This is the library. That's a classroom. Entrance into the classroom. And this is the main entryway. So. What else we're going to do is we're going to refine this a little bit more, and then we're going to hand it over to the district to put this onto your website. We will also have printouts made, which we will distribute to the staff, and you'll have a copy. We're going to get that at the groundbreaking. And we also thought about making a couple of larger boards. One could be at the district office, so when parents and visitors come, they can look at it. And then one we want to put it at the school itself, so parents can look at that. So this is
say in addition to that, Core has already made.
So it's 5 by 3, 6 by 2, 4 by 8.
4 by 8, excuse me. 4 by 8 banners. There's one of the entryway on Osborne, mounted to the face of Core's trailer. There's an overhead or a bird's eye view that's mounted on the corner of 36th Street and Osborne, and then there's the I'll call it the courtyard view on 36th Street itself. We've held the signs back away from the construction fence so as not to get them vandalized. The intent there is to, once the project is done, to hand them over to you, the district, might possibly put them in the gymnasium, cafeteria, and be able to show this to students and parents in the future.
So in the process of getting to the GMP, one of the things we did is we also compared it to, we're doing 7 schools now, we compared it to see that if it's within the range. We're doing a school for Litchfield as well as for Riverside. So we compared that. There was a lot of discussion on long-term maintenance. How are we going to make sure that we're building something for 25, 30, 40 years? We looked into that. Quality was a big issue. We shortened the construction schedule because this was a suggestion from code. It helps us to lower the price. We looked at how quickly can we build, less general conditions. We took a little longer time to do the design document because that way you have a much detailed set. When you put that out to bid, you get a lot of representation. And that happened because we got a lot of bids which were really within 3 to 9% between the low and the high bidder. So there was a bigger ranges too, but a lot of subcontractors were grouped together. That means that they've looked at the drawings and we have some really good bids put together. There have been code changes to the HVAC and the building envelope, just makes it that much more energy efficient than what Babak was a very energy efficient school, but this is, we've taken it a step further down. And with that, the overall GMP, including the adjacent waste for phase 2, was 15,164,444. We also have 2 alternates, which is for kitchen equipment for 234,596, and special systems, which is for 126,654. So this is where we are. We've come to present that, answer any questions at this point.
My husband and I have enjoyed walking our dog by the school every week and seeing the progression. And I think that movie is going to be great to show the community what the school's going to look like. And it'll be great to have that on the website. So thank you.
Yeah, that's very cool. So just a couple of questions and some observations. So as I've been spending a lot of time talking to community members in and around Monte Vista campus for a little project I'm working on. That was a joke. What has come to my attention, and people honestly come up to me and say, "What happened to the school? What are they doing with it? Did they sell a lot?" And I know that seems like a far-fetched thing that people in our community don't read our Creighton Communicator and aren't paying attention to the fact that we're rebuilding Monte Vista. And I appreciate the beautiful banners that are coming, but could we make even a simple banner that is text that says something like Monte Vista grand reopening August 2015 or whenever the date is, to help quell the truth or rumor in the community? Which I honestly, when people brought that up to me, I'm like, are you joking? Like, you're kidding that you don't know that we're rebuilding the school, but they were honestly sincere in their worry that we demolished one of our buildings and like sold the land to a developer or something.
I think what we could do is take it one step further. Instead of doing 2 banners, maybe do 4 and put 1 on each side. So anybody walking down the street or driving by, they can see, to make it your bond dollars at work. And show them a rendering.
That's a wonderful idea. Communicating their bond dollars at work.
Grand reopening July 15th.
Right.
Great, thank you. And I know that the visual, I love the video. Did I notice a lot of fruit trees next to fences where frats can jump on roofs? I'm just wondering. I know we're building concrete buildings here, but I do live in a neighborhood, in a community. Okay, just throwing that out there.
And Mr. Madison and Mrs. Mechanic are not done fighting.
I am slightly aware of the discussions that are taking place about trees. Just live in part of our community where we have frats and so to avoid.
And we try to make sure that we have trees which can adapt to our climate. It's very important, conservation of water and so on. So we are making an effort to make sure that we don't do non-native trees and things which low maintenance, those kind of things.
I'm a big fan of the red push pistache in the event that anyone cares. It's a really nice tree. I just noticed a slight variance in the final GMP, and it's literally only $1 off. So on the attachment from core, we 15,525,693, and the board agenda item is to approve 15,525,694. Obviously, that little dollar cushion's probably not going to hurt anybody, but just wanted to point out for the record that we have a little discrepancy between the attachment and the agenda item. I don't think dollar makes that big of a difference, but just for full disclosure.
Any other questions or comments or a motion?
I move that we approve agenda item, someone help me out here.
I move the governing board approve to award the guaranteed maximum pricing for phase 2 building replacement of Monte Vista School to Core Construction for the amount not to exceed $15,525,694.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here this evening.
As a final note, I understand that Mike Madison has regained his friendship with the neighbor next door.
That's good to hear. Thank you all very much for staying late. Next, under business and plant, we have the annual financial report for fiscal year 2013 to 2014. There's a presentation and a motion by Scott Woolmer.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. This year was a little different for the AFR. Usually you look at it and it looks a lot the same as last year, increases, decreases and such. This year, well, I should say last year, our health insurance had become unaffordable. We went out to bid that year, and what we ended up with was a policy that cost $983 less per FTE than what we had before. Our classroom site fund paid for a good portion of the pay increase that went to teachers. Career ladder phasing out. So before we even had made our first decisions budget-wise, academically, our dollars in the classroom had dropped largely because of things like that. So here's what we spent. That looks different than mine. Okay, classroom instruction. Down 0.7% because of those things I mentioned before. Student support, that's people who work directly with students but not in the classroom, like psychologists, speech teachers, nurses, etc. That was up about 0.5% over the year before, largely because of services in special ed. So in special ed, while our total number of students was down, those who required a higher level of services has increased. And so our dollars per student that we spend in special ed is up as our student support costs. Instructional support are those departments that support the teachers, like the curriculum department, special ed department. That was flat. General administration up 0.1% because we had election services in November 2013, we had none in November 2012. School administration is up 0.3%. That's the missing, I don't know what that looks like on y'all's screen, but it doesn't show here. School administration is at $2.2 million figure. That's up 0.3% because of termination benefits. We had some longtime employees leave us. Central services, flat. Physical plant, and the rest of those are about the same as they were before. Other is a required federal match for food services, which is a federal program, and a tiny little bit of community ed expenses. Here again, special ed's up about 0.4%, and the others are largely the same. Not much change there. Expenditures by object, we're at 88.8% salary and benefits. That was 88.3% last year. So payroll's up a little bit and services were down. So perhaps we used a little less agency and a little more employees. Everything else about the same. Utilities at 4.9%. That was flat. We didn't really have any increase in utility costs this year, which is nice. Prop 301 spending is up 12.5%. That's a bright spot and should continue to be that way. We've increased spending from those funds for the last couple of years. Currently, we get about $290 per student. Before the market crash in 2008, it was up over $400 a student. So perhaps we can get that high again, but that is trending upwards, and that goes to teacher pay performance payments and also for teacher compensation. On the capital side, you see that soft capital is gone. So about 10 years ago, unrestricted capital was cut in half. Half of it became soft capital, which could only be used in the classroom, and then that was discontinued. So we lost half of our capital dollars through that way. Adjacent ways, we didn't spend any monies from adjacent ways last year. Over the next 2 years, this year next year, we'll spend about $1 million in adjacent ways to hook the new Monte Vista and the new buildings at Mackin School up to the outside world through things like sidewalks, bus bays, water pipes, and power lines. The bulk of our $22 million in bond sales will be spent next year. This last year, we spent $2.3 million in bond proceeds on various projects around the district, most notably office security and the beginnings of Monte Vista and Mackin building improvements. Bonds outstanding, we sold our remaining authorization this year, so we started the year owing $11.5 million. We redeemed about 3.1, so we redeemed about 25% of our total bond authority at this point, 30 million left. This is the whole sort of schedule. It's kind of busy, I guess, but you can see what we have left. Those bottom two lines where the interest rate jumps to 5.4 and 5.6%. Those are the Build America bonds that we built in during the sort of stimulus period where the federal government agreed to chip in on the interest cost of those. So they send us 2 checks a year to help defer those costs in order to stimulate borrowing during that time. So we participated in that program. Federal and state grants, our federal spending is up a bit, about $600,000. Our revenues were not, but there was a rededication, reemphasizing budgeting and using current monies in the current period. And for state grants, we had an increase in schools participating in the school safety grant. Other funds, first of all, let me apologize, that school plant fund, we did not spend any school plant fund monies. That's a cash balance, so that should be zero. School plant monies are funds we get for a rental of district property, most notably the cell towers in the district. Traditionally, those monies have gone for vehicles, school buses specifically. We didn't buy any this year, so that should be zero. That's a mistake. Everything else is fairly steady. Indirect costs, that's monies we get from grants. When the federal government gives us grant money, they realize that it's, they're going to have to use the payroll department and the procurement department, et cetera. So we get a small percentage of those monies to pay salaries in places like the business office and human resources and technology. I forecast that after the stimulus era where we got some extra grants, that those revenues would tail off. They really haven't, so that's a fairly healthy fund. We increased spending, I believe, $100,000, $160,000 this year. We may be able to do that again. Everything else about steady. Civic Center monies are monies we get from renting our classrooms and our other facilities for anything from block watch meetings to Covenant and Covenant and Little Big Mines are our primary revenue sources for those funds. They go largely for things like custodial overtime. If we have meetings in our rooms, custodians have to clean those rooms, be around to lock them, unlock them, etc. So a lot of that gets spent there.
Scott, can I jump in and ask a question? So what, and I don't expect you to talk about tonight, but in terms of, I'm trying to think through the way to ask this question. I guess what I'm thinking is, what's our return on investment in terms of having Covenants take up space at Biltmore Prep? Obviously, they're paying what you just said in terms of the Civic Center cost for additional maintenance and operation, but what are they actually paying to lease the facility from us for their for-profit operations?
Those two organizations pay us in the neighborhood of $3,000 a month, and the return is quite nice. We're building revenue, we're building cash balance in those funds.
So each of those, so $6,000 per month total, or $3,000?
One of them is $3,000, one of it is evolving in that direction. I'm not quite sure.
They're equal, they're both the same.
We initially had a reduced rate for big mines and raised them each year until they were equivalent to our standard rate. And they're evolved at the standard rate.
Right. Yeah, so the cash balance in that fund is increasing.
So if I do quick math, it's $72,000 for those two at that site. So the total Civic Center balance is $72,951. So is that saying that the difference is what we're charging for every other event at any one of our other campuses for the academic year? $951 seems a little low for all of the things that we know that our community uses our facilities for.
What do you guys have a question again?
So if Civic Center includes the rental fee at $6,000 total for Little Big Mines and Covenant at BPA for a 12-month contract, because they operate all year long. They don't just operate during the school year, right? So that's $72,000. So we have we have an expenditure here of $72,951. Is that what we're taking in, or what we're spending to operate the Civic Center?
That's what we're spending. The cash balance in that fund's about $380,000.
So we're spending almost $73,000 to pay for genders, night activities, weekend things, to be able to manage the facilities for all of our. Okay, so sorry, that's clear stuff for me. Thank you.
Lastly, this slide is interesting because it shows, the relative weight of our different funding sources. It's not really comparable from one year to the next because a lot of our funding is based upon last year's attendance. So you can lose students and your spending per pupil would rise. So we don't really kind of use this for year-to-year comparisons, but you can see where our money really comes from and how much gets spent on a per student basis. So this is more interesting than anything else, I guess. And that's it. Any questions about the annual financial report for 2013-14?
Just a general question. Do we don't receive or won't receive or didn't receive, I don't know which, if it's present future tense. This governor success funding dollars, do we have, that's coming in this fiscal year, correct? It's not,
That's what we're told.
yay. All right, I just wanted to double check, because I knew that it was
Yeah.
legislated last year, but it's not appropriated till this year.
Yeah, so we haven't budgeted, that's gonna be a cash-based account, as opposed to like M&O where you calculate what you get and you can spend it on the first day if you were to have that line of credit, so, you know, whatever comes in, that's what we get. So they do have the formula, but then, how much gets appropriated might be a different matter, so we'll see. Anyone else?
Thank you, Scott, for staying so late. Oh, there is a motion, I'm sorry.
I move the governing board approve the annual financial report for fiscal year 2013-14.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Next, under general, we have overview of Creighton District's communication plan, and Ed Stoltz will present preliminary information on forms of communication that we have with stakeholders in the district.
Madam President, Governing Board, Cabinet, thank you for staying so late. Basically what I've put together is all of the communications that we provide to stakeholders within the district. Obviously, we sent out a communicator. It was designed for a quarterly report. In 2013, it was sent out twice. It's sent out both English and Spanish. 40,000 copies, or approximately 40,000 copies, are sent to every residence within the district, every business within the district, and a mile radius outside. We actually have a mailing company that actually does that for us. And it's also posted on the website in both English and Spanish. Our website is made up of district site, school sites, and department sites. It is translated on the front page at the bottom. It can be translated into 81 different languages.
Can I ask how that works? Is that like a special software that just does that when you click on it?
It's actually a function of Edlio and Google as a partnership. And when you go to the bottom, you can actually select the language on our webpage. This year they've added several Arabic and Tagalog, which is kind of odd because Tagalog actually has 147 dialects, but its written language is much smaller. So it is in 81 different languages, or can be put into 81 different languages. The marquee on the fly is that front page of each one of the sites, as well as the district office that actually does the marquee floater across the banner that runs across the front page, where we put different messages. 3 weeks ago when we had the wonderful little sprinkles here, we actually put school closures on there as well. New sections and the marquee can actually be changed. I have 4 personnel at the district office that can actually make changes on the fly and make immediate changes if we need to for emergency purposes. We went through an awful lot of planning last week for what was supposed to be rain, to make sure that we put messages in the right places, not only on the banner, because if you're using a mobile phone, the banner doesn't show up, but to put it as a top news item, which would be the first thing you'd see on a mobile device. Community Education puts out monthly newsletters out to all parents via the parent liaisons. It's translated in English and Spanish. It provides information on volunteer opportunities, APTT information, APTT meetings, and also scheduled training that the community education provides over at our building behind Excellencia, which are parenting classes, computer education classes, and that changes on a routine basis. Infinite Vision's robocall, which we've become very dependent upon for the last couple of years. We usually utilize it every day for attendance at all of our sites. Attendance is normally done by 8:30 in the morning. And so from then, once the attendance is finalized and the excused absences are put in, the system actually goes out and calls every parent that we do not have a message from or a note from, and calls notifying the parent that their child is not there today and please provide us with an excused absence. District utilizes to include transportation. When we had some bus shortages where the buses were going to be late, we used it to robocall parents so that they would know that the buses were going to be late. Weather closures, district-wide meetings. That's also translated to English and Spanish. When the message actually comes up on your phone, you have the option of selecting as it's reading to you whether you want to get the message in English or Spanish. Other forms of communications that we utilize throughout the year, door hangers for kindergarten roundup. That's done to all residents within the boundaries as well. It actually goes out to the same, and it goes to that 1 mile radius outside as well as it's to the same residences that get to communicate it. Door hangers and flyers for school start and stop dates. Flyers and information sheets for district level newsworthy events, both in English and Spanish, such as boundary meetings, things like that, advertising and outside news, employment opportunities, articles in educational journals. Over the last couple of years since we've been working with Apple and we've received the Apple Distinguished Programs, we've been given the opportunity to write articles for different education technology journals, as well as for the last 4 years we've had featured speakers at the ISTE conference, wherever that's being held. Community council meetings are held approximately every 2 months. That's a flyer notification out to all parents as well. Budget forums and boundary forums. When we were doing boundary changes at Monte Vista, we used robocall as well as flyers and door hangers to get the information out for the meetings. ABTT meetings, the schools and the community education department are very aggressive in getting that information out to our parents to ensure that they're attending the meetings. IHE and technology parent meetings for the flipped classrooms, we're holding regular meetings as well as at the beginning and the end of the year. We hold mandatory meetings to make sure that all of our documents are signed for our students to be able to take the iPads home and so forth. Site communications, all sites have newsletters, most are monthly. They are also translated into English and Spanish. Provides site-related information as well as volunteer and district promulgated information. Flyers sent home as necessary, translated into English and Spanish. Some sites with large numbers of specific language immigrants are translated into other languages. We are looking at that at Larry C. Kennedy with his large immigrant population to make sure that we are aggressively communicating with our parents in their own language. They also send flyers home for any newsworthy items such as lockdowns or if anything happens on the campus where we have to get immediate information out to our parents. Flyers are normally done in a matter of an hour and students are given them so that they can take them home. And then the PTO, PTAs, some are monthly, some are semi-annually. And I will be honest, some PTOs and PTAs do not have newsletters. Some PTOs here in the district are much more active than others. That doesn't include the fact that we communicate with our employees, our teachers, staff on a regular basis via email, via flyers. Anytime we have legal information, that's all sent out to our staff and employees. Email has become the communication form of choice for all of our staff members.
Madam President, and Mr. Stoltz, Dr. Boyle, is there anyone who kind of helps us decide what the content should be? How do we arrive? These are ways that we can communicate, and obviously some of the things, are emergency type procedures, or if it's around a specific event, it's kind of obvious, rain today, don't come to school, those kinds of but is there anything kind of strategic in terms of, especially, for example, with the communicator, who develops those articles? And is the person that puts together the communicator, does that person make recommendations to us? Is it simply what we said and that person designs?
To be honest with you, we utilize a journalist, expert, I don't know what you would call her, to put the communicator together. It is collaborative between that individual and leadership. There have been some, over the years, there have been some consistencies in when we hire new principals, when certain things happen within the district, those things go into there. But it really is a collaboration between the leadership and Marilyn Miles.
I also want to say, kind of, I hope that we kind of keep in mind who the audience is. I know what I get from other districts in the mail that mail to us are kind of keeping in mind, well, when I get our newsletters from other districts, it's kind of marketing material for their schools. And I guess for some audiences, it may be a good idea to have pictures of internal awards that are gotten by our employees, but I don't, if another district sent me something, or if I weren't on the board here, I probably wouldn't care too much, to be honest, what internal awards were given. Maybe if that district were given an award, the teacher of the year from whatever organization nationally happened to come from that school district, great, that would be of interest to me. But I would just kind of emphasize that I would like to see us maybe have a little more strategy around what we put into the communicator. Is there an identified target audience currently, or is it just kind of the general community?
It's really general community. And I think the communicator has had the same style for a number of years. So it's some human interest stories. Certainly if there's an overriding, making sure that we get that communication out. I think just most recently, there was a recommendation to have children, that the community more interested in children. So I don't know, a communicator is coming out momentarily, and that's what you'll see. So the children, you'll see again the information, the legal information on overrides. This time, there's again, a demonstration to the public that we are doing things with bond monies, etc. So, and again, we employees. But frankly, I have lived in Madison district for a number of years, so probably a lot of the kind of things that you see in the communicator, I've seen in Madison newsletter as they honor choose employees. So I think the more recommendations we can get, the better.
Okay, I would note that, for example, in Madison, and I think I have seen their newsletters, and they are similar, but what those of us who live outside the district are getting is not the Madison newsletter, it's the postcards.
Right. Most recently, it was the advertising of their new STEM high school, so I think that it would be nice to move towards that at some point, once we, because I think it was part of our goals as for the district to start implementing more programs, but, it might be nice to show people the flyer with the fly program, and as we develop more, innovative programs like that, STEM program or whatever it might be, to be able to advertise that, but I'm not sure that we're necessarily quite there yet. Build it first and then click on it.
Yeah, and I believe their target, again, our communicator goes to every resident. It's not a specific target group. But again, we go a mile outside. I know some of their targeted postcards have gone much further than that.
I received the Falls District, their newsletter too, and it's essentially much of the same stuff. I would say though that, I think that they do have a lot more focus on what the kids are doing, but it's very similar. It's, very focused on what they're achieving internally.
And as far as the employee awards go, I understand what you're saying as far as that goes, but those volunteer awards, we get an awful lot of great feedback from our community because we list all of our outside volunteers who are getting awards and so forth, and that means an awful lot to our community to get recognition that way.
I agree. I think those are important thank yous to the community.
Well, and I think just to remind us that we adopted as part of the superintendent's evaluation a goal around strengthening the district communications. And this is the first step in understanding what we currently have and do, and kind of as a launching point to think through. We, I think, have a lot of data that talks about our pain points in communication, and whether it's teacher surveys that say that, teachers don't feel that parents are engaged and involved, despite the fact that you're clearly saying we're reaching out to them, but they're not reaching back, or whatever the case is. So I think that our next steps is thinking through, what are the concerns that we can address in the short term, maybe the midterm and the long term, and then how do we update our process and our plan to try to address some of those pieces. I also agree that the idea of focusing on our students in our external messaging is an important part of that messaging. I also like that we're communicating to our community about our volunteers, especially since it goes to the communicators specifically. It's really the only strategy of all of the things that we do that go beyond parents. Everything else is really designed to go to somebody who has connection to one of our schools because their student is enrolled in our school or they're an employee of our school district already. So if the communicators are in our website, obviously, but that somebody has to try to have a reason to go to the website to access it. The communicator shows up at their businesses and at their homes. I think maybe one of the pieces that we could consider is not necessarily a format change, but what I don't see in our communicator, and frankly I don't see in anybody else's communication either, so we could be sort of cutting edge, is a prominent section that says, how can you help? Where can you, support the district? And so really be a call to action, but let people know, here are the, things not buried in a detailed story, but here are the things where we need your help in, business community, religious community, whoever you are, and then really target the ask, and then also make it really clear. If I'm interested in supporting district initiatives, do I know the superintendent? Who do I bother with that piece? So I think we could really be very proactive in highlighting a prominent section of the communicator to be, very pushy, frankly, to our community at large to say, we need your help in these places. If you have time, energy, resources to support our school district, here's who to call, which also means that there's got to be somebody to call, which I think has been an ongoing conversation on the board. We certainly don't have funds at this point to staff a full-time marketing and communications position, and that's work that's been assigned to a lot of different people. So I'd love to see in a comprehensive plan that would come to us, at a later date, what do you think are the short-term things we can tackle and address, and then how do we think through, effectively using what we've got, because I think that we still have an opportunity for improvement, similarly to the conversation about teachers. If we are saying that we are sending all of this information to parents and to caregivers and guardians of our children, and yet they're not coming to the things that we're making available to them, which has been frustrating our teachers because parents don't seem to be engaging in the support of their students in the classroom. And we've got some kind of a disconnect in either what we're offering, how we're offering it, how we're communicating it, and I think that's worthy of, conversation.
And some of it is, going back to what Matt said, some of it is knowing who your target audience is. And I'll be honest, it's very frustrating for those of, I know Matt was on the board and Tiffany was on the board when we did the boundary change in Monte Vista. We had 6 boundary meetings. You know, we robocalled, we sent flyers, we did door hangers. And I'll be honest, 5 of the 6 meetings had less than 2 people in the audience. Yet this was going to impact 800 kids. So it's difficult. How do you get the message across when the message they're sending you is, okay, make a boundary change. You know, it was just one of those things that was very frustrating because we wanted good feedback. And we did finally have one meeting where we had 12 or 13 people at. But it was very difficult because you're trying to make decisions, you're trying to make sure everybody has input on what you're doing. And then when they don't show up, it's kind of frustrating. So knowing what they're looking for is the hard part. You know, were they looking, you know, if we offered a free dinner, maybe we've got a bunch of people there. But, you know, that's the things that, you know, how do you communicate in the proper way to get our community involved?
I know some of the surrounding parochial schools, namely Santa Ynez, St. Agnes, actually has a fair every year. So, and that gets all of those parent involvement and stuff. So.
Some of our schools actually do still have fairs. And so, I mean, we do get participation as far as that goes. And they do utilize that opportunity to get information out, get them involved, get them to meet the staff. And I believe, Mike, haven't we been invited? Mike's not here anymore. We've been, he's stuck out behind me.
Don't we still have cafecitos though? And are those in every school?
At the same time, we invite the police department, fire department, and so forth. That gives an opportunity. Well, but the whole issue is giving the opportunity for the kids to see that the cops are okay. Letting them see them in a totally different environment is a great thing on our campuses. But the cafecitos are still going on. I apologize, that's one thing I did not put on here. So there is an awful lot of those things that still work. But again, we still need to look at, you know, maybe getting some feedback from parents of what is the best way to communicate with you. That may be better because obviously in some instances what we're doing isn't getting the recipient back.
One thing that I don't know, I may just have not seen it, or I don't know if it's there, but how much, I know that the separate school sites, depending on who's in charge, has you know, Facebook pages and different social media, but do we have opportunities for people to be able to, I don't know, I don't tweet really very much, so like, I don't like to be able to tweet at us, or, you know, like, just to, you know, if people wanted to, so I just wonder if there is a centrally run, you know, social media, Facebook page for the whole entire district. Like I said, I know that schools will have them, but, you know, that reaching out to people in that way. And then just another suggestion and question really is, how much do we, you know, kind of, because at Wilson, they're much smaller and probably much easier to manage. They track their kids all the way through college, you know, to see what they're doing. And I'm just curious if we do anything like that in a meaningful way, in a direct, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but in a really precise way, or, you know, because those would be nice things to hear about, or announcing kids who, you know, made it, you know, got a scholarship to Brophy, or made it into the IB program, or, you know, the Montessori program at Camelback. So just thinking about the kind of news that I would like to see, that's the kind of news that I would like to see in the communicator, and then the other social media.
Okay, we do, the majority of our schools do have Facebook pages. The district has a Facebook page that is actually run by the HR department. And we've utilized it as a, she tries. We do have a Facebook page. It is run by the HR department. Don't think of me that way. It's mostly used to attract teachers and employees to the district. I do not run the Facebook page. Facebook is another one of those gray areas. Facebook has to be locked down very tightly, especially we had an incident 1.5 years ago where there was a Biltmore Preparatory Academy Facebook page up there. Too bad we didn't own it and we had to put it up. The problem is it used their logo. It used everything looking exactly correct like Biltmore Preparatory Academy. The problem with it was the calendar on it was totally incorrect, and people were showing up for meetings that weren't being held. It took us almost 3.5 months to get Facebook to fix the problem. A student had put it up as a joke. And the whole issue is he was having fun with it.
I hope they passed some class because of that. That is,
I have no idea.
critical thinking and problem solving.
And I'm using the term he only in a general sense because I don't know if it was a girl or a boy. But because Facebook does not share that information, but literally it took us 3.5 months to convince Facebook it was an inappropriate page so that we could have ours up and running that was correct. At the same time, with all of the things going on around the world with Facebook and with teachers and school staff losing jobs because some of the things that go on Facebook. I give they hate me the first week of school because I give this 2-hour presentation on, and the whole issue is that the
New governing board members teach you for a while.
the bad thing about it is, I'm sorry?
And you don't differentiate professional development for them, so they have to.
No. The frustrating part for me is I can't protect any staff member on Facebook. I can protect you inside here, I can protect you with your email, I can protect you and everything else. But I literally have no control nor any ability to protect a teacher who makes the one mistake that may get them in trouble. And the fact is, it's unfair to teachers that they can't have a social life in this arena. Because it is unfair, but we are educators, so we are held to a different standard than the average person out on the street. And as long as we remember that. Tracking kids, again, I'm not sure how you would track the child or the student without getting involved with a parent to allow us to track and keep track of that student so that we can share information back and forth in a meaningful way that would give you the information. We do, I'm pretty sure we have done articles. I know that sites have done newsletters on students who have been selected for Brophy or Xavier. So I know that information is being shared as far as tracking every student going to Camelback or every student going in and whether they get selected for college and where they're going to college and things like that. We don't have a formal process. I'm sorry, that was a long answer.
It has been, I remember the communicator times when we've seen people who have gone to Harvard with other roles.
Especially if they've come back to our community, or especially if they've come back to Arizona. The teacher who teaches here now that was a student here was in an article this last week. The dancer was several years ago. So we do try to gather that type of information so that we can show success stories from Creighton.
So I think that too, like if you were able to maybe get the social media on lockdown, Susan, then you had complete control of it, then that might even be an opportunity to perhaps, the kids don't use the Facebook these days, but it's all about the Instagram. But they might actually go on there and, you can invite them, former Creighton students, what are you doing, or something, I don't know, I just feel like, especially with the millennial generation, it's like they barely even have an email address, but they have everything else, they communicate through pictures and Snapchat.
Right, and also remember there's a legality issue as well. We fight this every day of finding second, third, fourth, fifth graders on Facebook. Well, it's a federal law that you can't be on Facebook under the age of 15. But I'm going to guarantee you that almost every child we have in the district under the age of 13 is on Facebook. So, yes. So condoning that and actively being an educator who friends one of a student under the age of 13, we're actually promulgating breaking the law. So that's the other legality issue that has come down over the last couple of years. But I agree, there's got to be another format or another way to communicate where it's also keeping the parents involved because, under the age of 18, they should be involved with whatever communications is going back and forth, such as with Gaggle, our email system for the kids, the parents can be involved. So I agree with you, need to look at that.
Wonder what other kind of laws that might be great.
Well, what I tell them is every one of you, before you sign up for Facebook, you read that 13-page disclaimer when you clicked OK, and you know every word of it, right? I have read it.
Could I come to your next professional development?
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? I know this is gonna be, this has been and will be an ongoing discussion item for our district. Okay, thank you very much. Last agenda item, future agenda items, are there any we need to schedule? Or any that you are requesting we add?
I will be adding, Madam President, something that I think can be put into the board bulletin, and that is, a few years ago, we had a presentation, that I'll say most of the time, on academic achievement of schools in our area, namely charters, but I think it would be good to look at charters as well as districts, kind of neighboring districts, and kind of see what their letter grades are, along with kind of a little bit of demographic data, maybe for your next lunch. So I'll ask for that to be an important bulletin.
I would like to add an agenda item. I should have written it down first and I didn't, but I would like to add an agenda item about the possibility of looking into an advisory type period for middle school students, if not entire classes, just because in my experience as a high school teacher now, probably the biggest shortcoming I see, and I teach kids who require special services all the way up to IB students. And granted, the IB students are much more organized than the other kids, but it's generally speaking a huge liability. It's a shortcoming that so many of our students have that I'd like to consider the possibility of some kind of organizational strategies class that maybe is held, I don't know, if not daily, once a week or something, but just start, I don't know, I'd like to see what we're already doing, if teachers are on the same page with those organizational strategies, and, yeah. Like I said, I should have written it down.
And I had placed several months ago an update on where we were at in implementing recommendations of meet and confer. And I thought that was on an agenda listed for October, November, and I'm not seeing it now. I see that we have discussed the meet and confer dates coming up for the next meet and confer, but what I had been interested in was previous meet and confer and what we were, I don't know if those ended up getting combined or not. I can do another agenda item if that's something that can't be found, but can you look there?
Anything else, or is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.